shoulder to shoulder, a warning for Saddam Hussein.
This issue will come to a head in a matter of weeks, not months.
How a little snow made Britain freeze in its tracks. And are this Russian pop duo pandering to paedophiles?
The ITV Weekend News with John Suchet.
Good evening. Shoulder to shoulder, Tony Blair and George Bush gave Iraq this warning tonight: you're not disarming and time is running out. After talks at the White House, the president said the matter would come to a head in weeks, not months. Of the second UN resolution favoured by Mr. Blair, yes, but only if it helps disarm Saddam. Our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports on the summit talks.
Bad weather moved the summit from Camp David back to the White House, but what did not change was the message. President Bush and the Prime Minister making clear the diplomatic options are now narrowing dramatically. President Bush appears to be very close to ordering an invasion of Iraq. Tonight he said Resolution 1441, already passed by the UN, provides the legal cover.
But 1441 gives us the authority to move without any second resolution. And Saddam Hussein must understand that if he does not disarm for the sake of peace, we, along with others, will go disarm Saddam Hussein. This is a matter of weeks, not months. Any attempt to drag the process on for months will be resisted by the United States.
It's a test for the international community too. And the judgment has to be, at the present time, that Saddam Hussein is not cooperating with the inspectors and therefore is in breach of the UN resolution. And that's why time is running out.
The next step in this diplomatic dance falls to Colin Powell, the US Secretary of State, who will make a presentation to the UN on Iraq's defiance. Tonight then, the path to a war with Iraq looks like this. On Wednesday, the US will present that evidence that Iraq is hiding weapons. The following week, the UN weapons inspectors will produce their second crucial report. If it shows Saddam hasn't complied, America and Britain may still push for a second UN resolution. That could set a deadline for war, possibly in early March. The Prime Minister's influence here appears not to be over the central decision of going to war, but over the roadmap leading to that moment. Many nations anxiously sitting on the fence will now come under immense US diplomatic pressure. The White House is playing it tough, and Mr. Blair knows the next time he meets President Bush, American and British troops may very well be patrolling the streets of Baghdad. Robert Moore, ITV News in Washington.
And I'm joined now from the White House by our political editor. Nick, Tony Blair was trying to bring President Bush behind a second UN resolution. Did he succeed?
No, clearly not. George Bush made it very clear that America doesn't need a second UN resolution, doesn't particularly want a second UN resolution, is certainly not willing to countenance one if it drags the diplomacy out for months instead of a few weeks. He is happy to give Tony Blair the chance to try and reach one. Downing Street sources describe him as open to that. Now, if you're generous to the United States, this is a hard cop, soft cop routine. If you're not so generous, it's George Bush deciding to do pretty much as he likes.
Well, now, did you come away with the impression that Blair and Bush are decided on war?
They are decided that Saddam Hussein is not going to change his behaviour. They are decided, therefore, that war will be the only option to force him to do it. They want to spend the next few weeks, though, as the military build-up carries on, trying to win international support and support from home. And Tony Blair, I believe, has told George Bush the key to that is the weapons inspectors. If they say that Iraq is not disarming, it will be much easier to get international support. George Bush, though, has always had his mind made up ever since 9/11. He says containment is no longer an option for threats. Oceans no longer protect the United States. Force is often the only way to do it.
All right, thank you, Nick. Here, a blanket of snow caused anger, frustration, and not a few questions today as Britain was left in a frozen gridlock. Many motorists who had set off for destinations yesterday were still on the road today. Airports were closed, trains cancelled, and motorways simply seized up. The M11 in the east looked like one long car park. Harry Smith reports.
They were calling this the road to nowhere, and for good reason. This is the M11 motorway between London and Cambridge. Thousands of motorists stranded with their vehicles. Lorry driver Nick Pullum left London at 6 o'clock on Thursday evening, bound for Norwich. 18 hours later, he was still there.
A bit poor, really, isn't it? When we all knew it was coming. Everybody knew the snow was on the way.
In some parts of the country, this was the only way to travel. From up here, it may look like a picture postcard, a blanket of white as far as the eye can see. But for thousands of people down there, it's quite a different picture, a scene of chaos and confusion.
There we are, first two customers.
But amid the confusion, good old tea and sympathy from the ladies of the local WRVS.
I didn't tell you that.
Elsewhere in the country, this was the northeast of Scotland, the roads were open, but freezing temperatures led to a spate of accidents. More than 100 schools were forced to close, no complaints from the pupils. On Teesside, local authority workers were stretched to get roads gritted for the morning rush hour. A helping hand was enough to get this car back on the road. All forms of transport were hit. This was Stansted Airport, where a blanket of snow closed the runway for much of the day. It was the same at Heathrow, where hundreds of passengers were left stranded, with more than 225 flights cancelled. As darkness fell, the M11 was reopened, but so few vehicles were using it, it seemed motorists had begun to heed warnings to stay at home. Harry Smith, ITV News.
Nothing summed up the awful plight of motorists more than a party of school children who had come down to London to the theatre. They left Peterborough yesterday afternoon. They didn't arrive back home until early this evening. Angus Walker caught up with them on the M11.
Home at last, after a trip to a London theatre turned into a nightmare journey, trapped in one of Britain's worst ever traffic jams. The students had been forced to spend the night, stranded on the M11, trapped in their coaches in sub-zero temperatures.
It's been hard as everyone's been getting a bit attitude of everyone, and it's been finding it hard to get along with everyone, but we've all had to pull together, and it's been like team building really.
It was a bit tiring because everyone's grouchy, all the girls especially.
We joined the group halfway home, managing to raise their spirits with fresh supplies of drinks and chocolate.
Pass it back, pass it back.
But despite the smiles, it was a horrendous journey, and teachers at the school are angry that the authorities seemed unable to cope with the weather.
What struck me was the lack of gritters and other emergency service around us. I suppose they were somewhere else, but on the main motorway, we just didn't see anyone.
Reunited with their parents, and teachers reunited with colleagues. Never again do they want to experience a journey like this in the traffic jam from hell. Angus Walker, ITV News, Lincolnshire.
The question motorists wanted answered tonight: where were the gritters? The man who runs Britain's motorways said today he was sorry, but that wasn't enough for many who had suffered. They wanted to know how so little snow had brought so much chaos. Chris Choi's been trying to find the answers.
Today I found a mountain of grit. What drivers want to know is why didn't more end up on our roads? After all, there was plenty of warning.
Tonight, 60-mile-an-hour gusts, and tomorrow, look out for these snow showers and skitey bits as well.
Heavy, driving snow this evening, possible blizzards.
Well, for any motorist that hasn't seen one recently, I'd just better explain. This is a gritter, and we've discovered that the apparent shortage comes down to a uniquely British mix of budgeting and bureaucracy. These can cost up to £100,000, and according to insiders, fewer are being bought.
There's a managerial hodgepodge. Gritters are run by a mix of councils, government and private contractors. Could that account for today's problems on the M11? Contractors claim they gritted continuously, but the Highways Agency reports a gap. It says the motorway was gritted at 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Then there was a 6-hour gap. Then at 8 p.m. the gritters returned too late.
Very unpleasant, totally unsatisfactory. We need to do better. And if I can just say that we've got an adverse weather forecast for this evening as well, so there has to be clear advice to people to stay at home unless it's absolutely essential to travel.
But drivers want grit, not apologies, and today's calamity shows there's no national coordination or consistency, not even a legal obligation for authorities to grit at all. Chris Choi, ITV News.
There's more news to come tonight, including jailed for the hit-and-run killing of a little girl. And Venables on his future, or otherwise, at Leeds. All that and more when we come back. Welcome back. He'd been banned from driving twice. He'd left a friend to die by the roadside. He was driving a stolen car. The man who killed 6-year-old Rebecca Sawyer when he crashed into her family's car on New Year's Eve was today jailed for 9.5 years. From Newcastle, Martin Geisler reports.
A month to the day after their daughter died, Stephen and Sharon Sawyer came to see her killer jailed for 9.5 years. Ian Carr had 89 previous convictions. He'd already been banned from driving for life. On New Year's Eve, while out on licence for his most recent offence, he killed 6-year-old Rebecca Sawyer in a stolen car.
He needs a life sentence.
He needs a life sentence, honestly. The only way to stop Ian Carr from getting behind the wheel of a car again is for him to be locked up for good.
The crash happened here. Ian Carr drove straight through this red light at speed. He made no attempt to brake and ploughed straight into the Citroen that was carrying the Sawyer family. Rebecca Sawyer died at the scene. Ian Carr abandoned his stolen vehicle a few yards up the road and ran off. 12 years earlier, just 1 mile away, the same thing had happened. Ian Carr, aged 15, crashed a stolen vehicle at this roundabout, killing his friend in the passenger seat. He pulled the youngster from the wreckage and draped his body over a fence, then ran off to a friend's house where he tried to concoct a cover story blaming the dead boy for the crash. The parents of his most recent victim say they'll now try to rebuild their lives. Their other daughter, 18-month-old Kirsty, may be partially paralysed as a result of the crash. She may never remember the accident. She will never know her big sister. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Ashington.
The widow of Stephen Oak, the police officer stabbed to death in Manchester, has spoken of life without him. She said she and her children had always known that each day could be Stephen's last.
Family photos. And you have good days and days when something just triggers off memories and you're reduced to tears. And obviously, because it's still quite raw, that happens quite often.
The Leeds manager, Terry Venables, admitted he was considering his future today after losing yet another key player. He said it meant the club could no longer compete with the best. Tim Rogers reports.
The body language said it all. Terry Venables clearly unhappy about the sale of some of his key players, but will he stay or will he go?
For whatever I feel at this moment, I do feel that, as I said, the players that are still here are the most important ones, and also the supporters, as has been mentioned. The more I think about it, the more I feel that it would be irresponsible to do anything other than stay.
He's unhappy about the sale of star defender Jonathan Woodgate, one of 5 key players who've been sold. But club chairman Peter Ridsdale insists he had no choice.
There are a lot of football clubs who are in need of cash. What we've done is we've taken tough decisions to bring cash in to make sure we're stable.
As for Jonathan Woodgate, he's now a player of a different shirt at Newcastle, but with kind words for Peter Ridsdale.
It's hard on the chairman. The chairman's had some stick, which I don't think he deserves. He's a very honourable man to me, looked after me through thick and thin.
But for the Leeds fans, there may be better news ahead. The club has announced they've signed Spanish defender Raúl from Real Madrid on loan until the end of the season. Tim Rogers, ITV News, Leeds.
In a few minutes, the Russian pop duo accused of promoting paedophilia. Tattoo are being criticised for their underage images. Find out what the fuss is about after the news from your area.
Good evening, I'm Keir Simmons. These are the top stories in London tonight. The capital has been struggling to return to normal after snow caused what's been described as the worst ever travel chaos. Stansted Airport was closed and passengers at Heathrow suffered severe delays. Tube and train lines were both hit, but motorists bore the brunt of with some motorways closed, stranding drivers in their vehicles. Haig Gordon reports.
Another 24 hours of the weather causing traffic turmoil. Major routes like the M11 in Essex at a standstill. Delays and cancellations on the underground because the de-icer got washed away by melting snow. And thousands stranded at the airports. Runways iced over. Staff unable to get to work. And now the blame game.
It's absolutely breathtaking. There are too many people responsible for roads in London, and my Transport for London runs the red routes. We had gritting machines out on all the roads we were responsible for at 8:30 yesterday morning, in some cases the night before. Now we read the weather reports, we were geared up for that. On the Docklands Light Rail, which we were responsible for, 100% service we anticipated. And whilst you'd expect there to be some disruption on the tube, I mean the complete collapse of the system is not explicable at all.
Well, clearly we didn't get it entirely right. We were de-icing our rails from 9:30 yesterday morning when we got the snow forecast like everybody else. It didn't work for us. We're not quite sure why. We've looked at the photographs of some of the evidence and we can see that we've got 2 inches of ice on our rails. So we need to understand what really went wrong there.
And on the roads, where were the gritters and the snow ploughs? The problem seems to be lack of overall control of the highways.
The roads that Transport for London operates itself, which are London's main roads, were properly gritted yesterday, but unfortunately what seems to have happened is that the M25 came to a standstill. A lot of traffic came into London, and it's reasonably clear that a lot of the borough roads, the ordinary roads in London, also, if they were gritted, it clearly wasn't effective.
The misery at the airports continues into tomorrow. At Heathrow, BA have cancelled 19 flights. Those taking off are severely delayed. At Stansted, schedules are in disarray. Eurostar has its problems. Services out of London Waterloo have been cancelled. And the forecasters say there's more snow and sleet heading towards the southeast. This is Hay Gordon for London Tonight.
The parents of a little girl killed by a falling tree at a school in Surrey have paid a moving tribute to her. And children have laid flowers at the spot where 8-year-old Rihanna Davenport died. Christopher Peacock reports.
Tree surgeons were dispatched to the Surrey school this afternoon to survey and even remove other trees which may pose a threat to staff and children. Some of the teachers came outside for a short break. They've been meeting to decide how the school copes next week when the children return. The parents of Rihanna Davenport issued a statement from their home at Leatherhead in which they said, "We will miss you so much, darling Annie. Your beautiful face, your loving nature, you brought sunshine to the lives of those who were blessed to have known you." It should have been just another day at school for 8-year-old Rihanna Davenport, but instead her short life was remembered in flowers laid by grieving parents and pupils at West Ashted School, where there is a profound sense of shock after yesterday's tragedy.
You send your children off to school and, well, you just expect to see them later, don't you?
The 40-foot Corsican pine that killed Rihanna when it fell on top of her was sawn up before being taken away. It's now the focus of a health and safety inquiry. The school playground should be a place where most parents are confident their children will be safe. But Rihanna's grieving parents will want to know why their daughter lost her life.
All of the teaching staff and some support staff are here. The mood is quiet and subdued. I would say there's a sense of shock.
Witnesses have spoken of the tree cracking like the sound of thunder. It's possible that recent heavy rainfall could have loosened soil around the roots. This tragedy could lead to the inspection of all trees sited within country school playgrounds. What Surrey Education Authority has now to decide is whether this particular tree should have been the subject of a safety order, or was this quite simply an act of nature? West Ashted School was closed today as a mark of respect, but it didn't stop families bringing their children to remember Rihanna. Most of them felt they wanted to be here for her. In Surrey, this is Christopher Peacock for London Tonight.
Detectives investigating the murder of a young boy whose torso was discovered in the River Thames have announced a vital breakthrough. Forensic work has revealed the boy, who was found near Tower Bridge 2 years ago, was from southwest Nigeria.
The area runs roughly from west and north of Benin City up towards Ibadan, in an area no more 100 miles by 50 miles. So that's amazing, really, for a country so large, the way we've narrowed it down. And we believe that that's where Adam spent all of his life and was a very recent arrival into this country, in fact, just before he died.
Police released CCTV footage of a vicious robbery at Malden Manor railway station in Kent. A 60-year-old ticket clerk was bound and gagged during the attack. Detectives say the man responsible already carried out similar offences. In football, West Ham have signed Fulham left-back Rufus Brevett. The 33-year-old defender will move across London after 5 years with the Cottagers. He'll debut at Upton Park against Liverpool on Sunday.